The following account is real. Names have been changed to protect the living and the innocent. This journal contains language and content that may not be suitable for all listeners.
Some days at the funeral home are completely forgettable. You clock in at 8 and clock out at 5, and nothing seems to really happen in between. Other days, you're sorting a cabinet of cremains with a numb mouth and are told that a prominent foot doctor and his wife committed suicide in their office. It's hard to forget those days. My name is Grant, and these are my funeral home stories. Chapter 5, Doctor's Office Murder-Suicide. It's June going into my senior year of music school. I'm 21 years old and taking about 17 credit hours over the summer in hopes of graduating on time after meandering through my sophomore and junior years. Needless to say, squeezing that many credits in over a summer while working full-time at a funeral home doesn't allow much time for sleep, so I'm fucking exhausted. To top it off, I spent most of my morning dozing off in a dentist chair having 2 cavities filled. The doctor had trouble getting me numb with the standard injection of Novocaine, so he doubled it. According to him, my mouth should be numb most of the day, and I should avoid talking and eating. I might bite my tongue, and that wouldn't be pretty. I hate dentists. I don't mind the procedures or the pain. It's everything else. The atmosphere is fucking garbage. The ugly light fixtures and smelly fish tank in the lobby are enough to make me want to turn and run while checking in. Is this a dentist office or an aquarium? Plus, there are never any good magazines, just old issues of People and highlights. All the art and decor in the patient rooms is nautical themed, prominently featuring seagulls and sailboats. Who decorates doctors' offices? Retired fishermen? A 4-minute fluoride treatment feels like an eternity if you don't have the foresight to bring the right magazine. I don't mean to sound overly harsh. I've been to almost every doctor's office in town getting signatures for death certificates, and none of them stand out as spectacular. They're all decorated with neutral colors, vertical stripe wallpaper, and some sort of industrial carpet. And of course, hideous art. Surprisingly, there's a lot more seagulls and sailboats than you might expect. It must be some weird rich guy ocean fetish. I don't get it. My appointment was first thing this morning, but my jaw still feels completely numb, and I'm occasionally slobbering out of both sides of my mouth. I've spent the last 2 hours in the funeral home's basement, killing time and avoiding people because of my soggy mouth. It's a good look for me, but I should probably stay in the basement. I wouldn't want to drool on any bereaving family members, would I? Since I'm being a recluse today, I decided to tackle a boring task that I've literally been putting off for 2 years. Logging and organizing our funeral home's cabinet of cremains. So why do we have a cabinet of cremains, and why am I organizing and logging it? Excellent question. Well, this may be hard to believe, but there are some people whose cremains just get left at the funeral home. This could be for a number of reasons. The family just forgot to pick up their loved one after the cremation, the person has no surviving family, or no one gives a shit and doesn't care what happens to the cremains. Most of the time, it's the last one. Isn't that sad? You live your whole life, and at the end of it, no one cares about anything you did, what you said. No one wants you. You'll live out the rest of your earthly existence as ash in a plastic box in a moldy basement, occasionally being checked on by mostly apathetic funeral directors. There are about 40 containers total in our cabinet, all ranging in dates from the 1960s to current day. I'm updating our list to keep at the front desk. It doesn't happen very often, but if someone calls checking on old cremains, it's better to have a list than to have to run down to the cabinet. This is the perfect job to keep me occupied while my mouth comes back to life. Plus, it's an easy time eater. Sit in a cool, comfortable basement, rummaging through shelves of human remains and occasionally scribble on a notepad. That sounds pretty rigorous. There's a TV that we keep in the basement and bring upstairs for showing DVD memorials at visitations and funerals. But most of the time it's used by the staff to watch the news or just space out while eating lunch. I set up the TV so I can see it from the cremation cabinet and turn it on. It's tennis on channel 12. Wimbledon, I think. My alternatives are probably daytime soaps or infomercials. I consider flipping, but I don't change the channel. I poke my jaw with my index finger as I walk back to the cabinet. Yep, still numb. I open the cabinet and am greeted by row after row of black plastic boxes, similar in shape to a child's shoebox. Each small box contains what was once a person, compactly parceled with the top flap sealed with a white rectangular sticker labeling the contents of each box with 2 pieces of information, name and date of cremation. I pick up a container and read the label. Rebecca Schuster, cremation date November 17, 1992. I feel the weight of the ashes in my hands. It's about 10 pounds. Who are you, Rebecca Schuster? And why didn't anybody pick you up? Were you the last living Schuster in town, or were you just unpleasant enough as a living person that no one could be bothered to pick up your ashes on the way to the laundromat? The sound of tennis on TV is interrupted by a Channel 12 news exclusive. My ears perk up. I set Rebecca down. An anchor starts a report by saying that there's been a shooting inside a podiatrist office on the northeast side of town earlier this morning. They're reporting 2 fatalities, the doctor and his wife, who also happens to be the office administrator. Wait, a doctor and his wife murdered in their office? Was it during an appointment? Who else was there? Consider my attention roused. I listen more intently. Authorities have secured the area, but may still be looking for a shooter. The anchor appears flustered as she's being fed a slew of new information coming into her ears faster than she can process. An infographic on the screen shows the location of the crime, and I'm thinking the doctor's office is right next to Havana Tanning Salon. My tanning salon. Well, it used to be until I stopped dating the manager. Things got a little weird between us, so I go to diamond tanning now. The beds aren't as nice, but the luxury of not bumping into a crazy ex every couple days makes up for the lackluster beds and bulbs. I look back into the cabinet and pick up another container. Eli Wales, cremation date July 18th, 1985. Wow. Eli's been in this cabinet in our basement longer than I've been alive. What was Eli's story? Eli Wales sounds like a prospector that got hacked to death and eaten by cannibals back in olden times. But he died in 1985, so that's probably unlikely. I rub my jaw and look back at the news. They're showing a live helicopter shot of the doctor's office, and just as I thought, it's right next to Havana Tanning. I see my ex-girlfriend's car in the parking lot. She generally opens the salon, so if the shots were fired this morning, she heard it. I haven't talked to her in months because of how weird we left things, but my morbid curiosity pushes my hand into my pocket and grabs my phone. I send her a fairly benign text. Hey, sorry it's been a minute. Saw your car and salon on the news. Everything cool? I immediately regret sending that text. She was so crazy, but double murders don't happen all that often during the day, and they never happen in doctors' offices. She's right next door. She had to have heard the gunshots. I'm too curious not to text, so forgive me for utilizing my resources. My phone buzzes. It's her. I open the message. Hey cutie. Yeah, things are crazy. Been talking to the police all morning. Oh no, she called me cutie. My phone buzzes again. Another text. I heard 6 gunshots and ducked behind the counter. Another text. I thought I was gonna die. Another text. Probably gonna have to close down. What are you doing this afternoon? Another text. I miss you. Ugh. This is what I was afraid of. I respond coldly. That's nuts. Can't do anything today. At school. Send. Dry and concise. This is a perfectly crafted leave me alone text. She responds instantly with 2 letters. Okay. She read me loud and clear. I didn't really get much info from her other than she heard 6 shots. I'm so glad I told her I couldn't hang out because I had class all day. That definitely won't come back to bite me, right? The office phone rings as tennis resumes on the TV. I'm too far away to get it in time, plus I sound like I have a mouthful of marbles, so I focus back on my task. I hear the elevator start running. I grab my notepad, scribbling Eli Wales' name down, pretending to be busy as the elevator doors open. It's Ned, our simple Irish funeral director approaching retirement. He tells me that the phone call a minute before was a death call, and I'm going with him. Ned squints his eyes, trying to decipher his handwriting on a post-it note cupped in his hand. I think we're going to a shopping center, he says. Is it a podiatrist office next to a tanning salon, I ask? Ned looks at me puzzled and says, yes. How did you know that? Ned, I know things. In the car with Ned, I'm giddy. I'm genuinely excited. I'm actually going somewhere interesting enough to be on the news. I can feel Ned looking at me as we drive to the doctor's office. He can tell I'm excited. I think he might be a little too. It's been so long since anything interesting has happened at the funeral home. For the past month, I feel like I've only picked up 2 types of bodies. Old people at home and old people at nursing homes. Both types are super boring. Usually it's just little old men and women lying in their beds with their mouths open. So a murder-suicide in a doctor's office is a welcome change of pace. I pop a piece of gum in my mouth and immediately bite down on my tongue. Hard. Fuck, this is what the dentist warned me about. I can taste blood in my mouth. Wow, I must have really chomped down. Thank God for the Novocaine. The police dispatch operator gave Ned a surprising amount of information. Generally, funeral homes need 3 pieces of information before making a removal. Who the body is, where the body is, and who the next of kin is. The operator gave Ned all this plus a lot more. It's confirmed that the 2 dead are the podiatrist and his wife, and it wasn't a double murder. It was a murder-suicide. They emailed a close friend a suicide note and explanation from the doctor's work email address. Apparently the doctor and his wife have been defrauding insurance companies for years and had gotten the word that they were going to be arrested and indicted this morning before lunch. But how does a podiatrist defraud an insurance company? Apparently it's easy. Most of the doctor's day-to-day business was simple and inexpensive outpatient procedures, fixing ingrown toenails and toe separations. The fraud comes in during the billing process. Apparently the doctor and his wife were billing insurance companies for expensive procedures that weren't being performed. So instead of the insurance company being billed $500 for a simple procedure, they're billed thousands for imaginary tests and operations that were never performed. The insurance companies then pay the doctors for these procedures. I guess they left a second note at the receptionist desk explaining all this. I give Ned a puzzled look from across the van. How and why does Ned have all this information? Ned must have either asked the right questions on the phone or had the chattiest dispatch operator ever. Regardless of how he got this information, I'm almost salivating in excitement. We passed Diamond Tanning on our right, and I remember my text conversation with my ex, the manager of the tanning salon next to the crime scene. I shouldn't have texted her. I can tell it already opened a whole can of worms. What if I see her? I told her I was in class all day and totally blew her off. She's accused me of leading her on before, so I really don't want to have any interaction with her to avoid any awkwardness. We pull into the parking lot of the doctor's office, tanning salon, and a small boutique pet grooming business. Police cars, photographers, and nosy onlookers crowd the scene. An officer lifts up the crime scene tape so we can park the van near the office's front door. Why are there so many people here right now? Don't these people work? I see my ex's car in the parking lot, but the tanning salon is clearly closed. Maybe I won't get busted for lying. I realize she's my ex and it doesn't matter what she thinks, but it's still awkward getting caught in a lie. Ned and I get out of the van. The news helicopter covering the scene does a low flyover. Dust and debris is kicked up everywhere. We take the stretcher out of the van and approach the front door. As we push the stretcher up the sidewalk, I run my finger down the right side of my face to see if I have any feeling. I do, but not much. I can feel the left side of my tongue swelling up from where I chomped down on it earlier. I can tell I've taken a nice bite out of it. I'm very happy I'm numb. I swallow my gum and push the stretcher through a large automatic sliding door. It was the first time I was in this building, but it looked and felt like every other doctor's office in town. Neutral colors, vertical striped wallpaper, pewter industrial carpet, and of course, awful art. This office had a theme. It wasn't sailing. Close though. I think the theme was summertime in Maine. It's hard to tell. There are several paintings around the office of pelicans and bridges, and pelicans on bridges. Again, who decorates doctor's offices? No amount of dressing will change the fact that this podiatrist's office is inside a tacky shopping center, next to a tanning salon. No crown molding can cover up the fact that this place was clearly one of those cash for gold places a few years ago. We're in the lobby and moving toward a long hallway with doors on each side. All the lights are off and it's completely quiet. It's eerie to see an office that's normally bustling with activity completely still and static. An officer pops his head out of one of the doors at the far end of the hallway and motions that we come towards him. My pocket vibrates. I check my phone. It's my ex again. It says, "How's school today? What classes do you have?" I break a sweat. Does she know I'm lying? Is she watching me? I look around and reassure myself that I'm on an active crime scene, and I'm just paranoid. I quickly text back with one hand, pushing the stretcher with the other. Can't talk. In class. I slide the phone back in my pocket as we move past patient room after patient room. Dark and empty, waiting for a day that will never start. We're at the room with the police officer now. Ned and I put our gloves on and walk in. This is the actual doctor's office. Same carpet and wallpaper, just a little nicer furniture. My eyes are immediately confronted by two bodies. One in the far corner laying on its back covered with a blanket. The other body is a man with gray hair and green scrubs crumbled before a beautiful polished mahogany desk, which was clearly once the centerpiece of this office, until the body stole the spotlight. I look at the body in the corner first. It's a woman in black pleated dress slacks and black patent leather heels. Her upper torso and face is covered up with a maroon blanket. This must be our office administrator and wife. The blanket and the way she's laying flat on her back remind me of how they found the members of Heaven's Gate after their mass suicide in the mid-90s. Creepy shit. There's a large pool of blood formed around the body, slowly soaking in and expanding on this hideous carpet. One of the woman's hands was exposed from under the blanket. Her pale white skin stands out in contrast to the deep red of her blood on the floor all around her. My phone vibrates in my pocket. Since my gloves are on, I ignore it. I direct my attention to the man in green scrubs, the doctor. He's positioned face down in front of his desk. It's hard to miss, but there's a large hole crudely blasted out of the back of this man's skull. The sight of it made my stomach flip. You could see the inside of his head. I couldn't look away. His gray hairs around the hole are stained blood red, and the pool of blood forming around his body and soaking up into his scrubs may be larger than his wife's a few feet away. I'm starting to get more feeling in my mouth, and it isn't pleasant. My tongue is beginning to ache from the hard bite I took out of it earlier, and I'm also beginning to feel the areas where the dentist injected the Novocaine. The small needle holes hurt, but also itch. Feeling the pain in my mouth and staring at this man's head, I imagine what it would feel like if a bullet passed through my brain and exited out the back of my skull. My phone vibrates again. He must have shot himself standing up and fell forward. I look at the wall behind his desk. The wall that would undoubtedly catch his brains and blood. And what did I see? You probably guessed it. It was a painting of a heron standing on a piece of serene, untouched beach property. White sands, blue sky, and blood spatter covering the entire thing. It looks like some super experimental Jackson Pollock painting. This is the first piece of doctor's office art that I actually would be interested in getting a closer look at. But the officer I forgot about in the room interrupts my examination and tells us that we're taking the woman in the corner. Another funeral home is picking up the doctor. Ned unfolds a disaster pouch and places it next to the body. I look around the office. There are 2 empty prescription pill bottles tipped over on the desk next to a picture of the doctor and his wife at some formal event. She's wearing a long red sequin gown and he's wearing a traditional black tuxedo, both smiling. They look really happy here. When did they decide to do this? Did they think if they took enough pills, death by gunshot wouldn't be as intimidating, or did they just want to make sure they didn't wake up even if the gunshot wasn't effective? What was their drive to the office like this morning? What was on the radio? My phone vibrates again. I know it's Miss Tanning Salon. I roll my eyes. Ned slaps my arm and points at the woman's body on the floor and says, "Would you look at that?" He's pointing to the blanket on the body. There appear to be 5 bullet holes in the woman's chest. What happened here? My ex did say she heard 6 gunshots. In that moment, my brain does gymnastics and I come to a reasonable conclusion about the bullets in the woman's chest. The couple must have come back to the office, swallowed the contents of the prescription pill bottles, and moved into their final positions. The woman probably laid on the floor and fell asleep. She wanted to die peacefully without any damage to her face. After she was asleep, the doctor covered her face with the blanket and shot her 5 times in the chest. He was probably closing his eyes and counting to 5 as he shot the woman he loved, knowing that he only needed 1 more bullet. He then stood up and probably considered all the things that led him to that moment. What wrong turn did he take in his life that led him to steal from insurance providers? How did he get caught? Could all of this been avoided? Standing in front of his desk, he looked at his dead wife and ended his fear of consequence. Instead of paying for his crimes, he murdered his wife and took the easy way out. But he did make major improvements to that heron painting behind his desk. I'm satisfied with my armchair forensic diagnosis of the scene, so I bend over and help Ned move the woman's body into the disaster pouch. My phone vibrates again. Why did I text that girl again? Oh, because I'm stupid and curious. I should have just been curious a little while longer, but I had no idea I'd be standing in the middle of the crime scene I was watching on the news. She didn't even tell me anything interesting. Maybe she'll just leave me alone if I don't respond. My phone vibrates again. We zip up the pouch and load the woman's body on the stretcher. I take one last look around the office. I look at the man's body and then look up at the painting of the heron. I wonder if I could buy that. Who would I call? I mean, what are they going to do with it? No one else is really going to want this painting. Maybe I should just grab it on my way out. You think anybody will notice? The large automatic front doors slide open and I immediately see flashbulb after flashbulb as we wheel the body to the van. I'm fine having my picture taken today. Although I spent most of the morning in a dentist chair, I still look sharp in my Navy Express Men's 2-button fitted suit. My phone starts vibrating as if someone's calling me. Pushing the cot and stabilizing it over the cracks, I reach my hand into my pocket and decline the call. We get to the van, load the body, close the back. The side of my tongue is now completely raw and swollen from the bite I took out of it earlier, chewing gum. I take one last look around at the crowds of people gathered at the crime scene. I lock eyes with a face I recognize. It's her, the manager of the tanning salon, my ex, who I just lied to. She's glaring right at me with her arms crossed. I remember the crazy look she's giving me from when we dated. She's far enough away that I pretend not to see her and just hurry to get in the van. Ned drives off and I pull my phone out of my pocket to check it. 11 text messages and 2 missed calls, all from her. Jesus. As I'm looking at my phone, it rings. She's calling again. I accept the call and I'm immediately being yelled at for not answering her texts or calls. My mouth is almost completely thawed out from the dentist visit earlier, and the pain in my tongue is almost unbearable, and it's getting more and more swollen. This, plus the added aggravation of having my phone blown up by someone I'm not dating, makes me hit a boiling point. I look at Ned and shake my head. He grins and empathizes with me. I interrupt her and say, "Stop." I realize now that I haven't really had to talk since I bit my tongue, and the swelling is affecting my speech, making me sound like Daffy Duck. I raise my voice over her yelling on the other end of the phone and say, "Leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you." I sound pathetic enough that Ed chuckles to himself. I hang up the phone call and block her number. Okay, problem solved. I probably won't have to deal with her again until she shows up in my bedroom in the middle of the night with a knife. Can't wait. 25 minutes later, I'm back in the basement, watching tennis while sorting and logging cremains. Today was a weird day. I got 2 cavities filled, watched tennis, saw a murder-suicide in a doctor's office, and told an ex-girlfriend to go fuck herself. My mouth is still very tender, and the bite on my tongue is swollen and rubbing against my molars. I walk to the fridge, grab a diet soda, and sit down at a small table in front of the TV. I space out for a few minutes, staring at the green grass tennis court on TV, which is an eerily similar color to the doctor's scrubs. I think about the hole in the back of his head and the 5 bullet holes in his wife's chest for a few minutes. Is that what love is? Killing each other in a doctor's office after getting wrapped up in insurance fraud? I think about what an asshole I was to my ex today as I wiggle my jaw from side to side. At this moment, I feel alone. I set my soda down on the table and walk over to the cabinet. I grab 2 containers, Rebecca Schuster and Eli Wales. I set them down at the table across from where I was sitting. I take my seat at the table and take a drink of my soda. I feel a little less alone. My name is Grant, and these are my funeral home stories. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you did, be sure to subscribe and tell a friend. Have a question or comment? Follow me on social media @Pomo and Kitsch. Also, be sure to listen to my album, Pomo and Kitsch, Fetch, available wherever you listen to music. Thanks for listening.